We are a human rights organization dedicated to the equal protection of all members of the human family, especially those who are vulnerable to abortion, euthanasia, lethal stem cell research, and infanticide. So unborn children, the dependent elderly, and people with disabilities who have no ability to speak for themselves often in the system.
How do you help the disabled? What sort of help does people associate you with one issue, but obviously Right to Life does a lot more than that? Yeah, we actually are the founders of National Right to Life, New York State Right to Life, the whole pro-life movement back long before euthanasia was ever talked about, knew that by legalizing abortion, we would be ushering in euthanasia. Frankly, when I first entered the movement years ago now, I thought that they were a little crazy, that one had nothing to do with the other. And then sure enough, fast forward, that big case out of Washington State, Washington v. Glucksberg, the judge who wrote that decision, which would have been the Roe v. Wade of euthanasia, thank God the Supreme Court at the time overturned that, but they quoted Roe v. Wade in that case. And so I think it needs to be clear that with euthanasia, we're not talking about a gift that we're giving someone, even though it's couched in those terms, that we're giving these people this special gift, right? So we're only legalizing euthanasia for those who have disabilities or for those who are terminally ill or whatever it is that they're talking about at the moment. But in fact, that's exactly the opposite. We're ripping the safety net out from under only a certain group of people who we think are better off dead. So we're discriminating against these people, and I think we don't even realize it. I think people really think, gosh, I wouldn't want to live like that. Gosh, I think that they should have the right to do this. But these same people who talk about autonomy certainly would not be suggesting that we allow an 18-year-old who gets dumped by her boyfriend the ability, the privilege, the gift of being able to jump off the bridge if she really wants to. No, right? We grab her, we protect her, we lock her up if we have to, till we can explain to her how beautiful her life is, how there's more fish in the sea and all that. And what we need to be able to do is continue that thought, get rid of our own prejudices, and say, you know what, even somebody who has, maybe especially somebody who only has 6 months to live, needs to understand that those months are precious. And in fact, most people who are terminally ill do. What do we hear from people who are terminally ill? You're diagnosed with a terminal illness, you have a few months to live. We say, no, I'm gonna go find shark cartilage or eat macadamia nuts or do any of these things, because it is a natural to want to preserve our lives, to cling to life, to figure out what we can do to help make ourselves healthier and to figure out how to live longer. The natural thing to do isn't to say, the doctor says, you have 6 months, and for you to say, no, I'll take 3. That doesn't make any sense. That means that that person needs help more than ever. So we're not giving someone or honoring someone's autonomy. We're abandoning them at the time they need us the most. What about folks that say to themselves, look, I've only got 6 months to live. My 6 months remaining in life is going to be very, very expensive and could economically devastate the financial situation for my wife and my children. What do you say to those folks?
Well, it's interesting that you use that example, because the pro-euthanasia folks, as they're trying to legalize euthanasia, they keep talking about pain. But in fact, on the frontiers of medicine, we are there. We can control virtually all pain if you're in the hands of somebody who understands pain control. But the people who actually do request assisted suicide say what you did. They don't want to be a burden. They don't want someone to have to dress them or take care of them or, heaven forbid, help them go to the bathroom. They don't want to take up the finances. And I think that that's the scariest of all, that we have sent the message. I say this within my own family. We have to be so careful that we're not sending the message, because if we say it, if I say to my daughter, I don't want to be a burden on you, what am I saying to my grandmother or to my mother? If you ever get like that, that must mean that you're a burden on me, right? We don't want to send those messages. So instead I say to my daughter, when you were little, I changed your diaper, and someday you're going to be changing mine. And that's just the cycle of life, right? That's just what we do. We have to change back the culture so that people embrace all stages of life and loving each other and not warehousing each other and turning our back and saying that this is it. And think about it, Joe, right now, if somebody is on the edge of life and they are they're lonely or they're in despair or they're suffering, what do? We help them, right? That's the natural thing to do. We help them. If assisted suicide becomes legal in any of the states in which we live, or the people who are viewing this live, what the message that begins to be sent is that you're a fool. you don't have to tolerate this. You don't have to endure this. So we don't have to help you. What you have to do is check out. In fact, George Delory, one of the, the poster children of the euthanasia movement, he was taking care of his wife who was terminally ill, and he wrote in his journal that she was sucking the life out of him like a vampire. Now, Joe, I've had thoughts I'm not proud of. I try not to write them down, but even if you do, that's bad enough. But then, Joe, he showed it to her. Here you go. And what did she do? She dutifully killed herself and got out of his way. So, but the pro-euthanasia movement doesn't say, no. They say, see George. So they use him as an example.
What is his mental state today? Is he proud that he did that to his wife?
That is such a good question. I don't know. I haven't followed him. But, we see others like Derek Humphreys, considered the father of euthanasia in this country, who wrote the book Jean's Way because he killed his wife and talked about how she wanted that, so she went on her own terms. Then he married Anne, and Anne and he fought for the euthanasia rights of people. Then Anne became terminally ill. Anne didn't want to kill herself. Derek harassed her and harassed her and harassed her, and she left a suicide note blaming him for her death. And she totally flipped on the issue of euthanasia, actually got involved in the anti-euthanasia movement, understanding the pressures and what people really need at that point in their lives, which is not a push off the bridge.
Besides helping the elderly, as you just addressed, you also help the disabled as a human rights organization. Talk about that a little bit.
Really, it's the same thing. And it's funny. There's a great organization called Not Dead Yet. We don't agree on all issues, but the organization is a group of people who have disabilities, and whether they were born with those disabilities or through accidents or what have you, and they are very, very active in the anti-euthanasia movement. There's also a wonderful group of people, a group of doctors in New York City, the Coalition of Concerned Medical Professionals. Again, we don't agree on every issue, but on the issue of non-voluntary euthanasia, withdrawing the protections and the health care from people who need it, or assisted suicide, they all see the writing on the wall that these people are already discriminated against in the medical community with health care, and that many doctors believe people are better off dead. We can't make you all better, then you're better off not being here at all. We'll send you off to be with the angels, which is better by far. So the people who are either disabled themselves, have disabilities themselves, or the people who work with the very poor, the terminally ill, people with disabilities are saying, no, the writing is on the wall. Oh my gosh, it's bad enough now. Now you give doctors the ability to kill their patients instead of helping them. And then, Joe, who's left to speak, right? I mean, when Derek wrote the book Jean's Way, Jean wasn't there saying, right, this way, it wasn't the pillow stuffed on my face, wasn't my choice. So we end up with a dead person who is not there to really speak to his or her final.
How, as a human rights organization, do you help these people that need assistance? What do you specifically do?
We fight for their protection in the law. We work to make sure that legislators understand all of the issues. Euthanasia especially cuts, and abortion and euthanasia cut across party lines. Certainly we've worked very hard for our Dems. We work very hard for our pro-life Republicans. They understand that this is not an issue that should be a political issue. For example, the Democratic Party has always been viewed as the party of the vulnerable, right? The party of the voiceless. And so people who are Democrats in Congress or in the state legislature see this clearly as just another attack on those who don't have a voice to speak for themselves. And the same with euthanasia. And so we fight for their protection legally. We have a great network of people. New York State Right to Life works with pregnancy centers in the area, maternity homes and that, where we refer people who need counseling or need assistance through, for various things when you're going through a pregnancy and after you have a baby. And then also people at the end of life. And I wish we had endless resources, Joe. Unfortunately, we are not the ones getting the federal funds or the state funds. Planned Parenthood gets all those funds to kill people, not to help them. So we are doing our best with the funds that we have, but our ultimate goal is the equal protection of all innocent members of the human family.
Well, you're the executive director for the entire state of New York of Right to Life, and nationally you're the congressional liaison for Right to Life. You want to talk about that a little bit and what your job is like and what you encounter on a regular basis?
Sure. At national, I'm the congressional liaison for the Department of Medical Ethics, so I deal with all euthanasia-related issues. only on the national level. And then in the state, of course, we deal with abortion, euthanasia, lethal human research. And let me, if I can say something about that. If we look at what's happening with children who are being experimented on, children in dishes in hospitals where people are now the new lab rats, right? We don't experiment anymore on lab rats. We experiment on little tiny human beings. So we have come to a point where this is just what we do. And so where does that naturally lead? Well, interestingly, if you look back to the Holocaust, we see that what came of the Holocaust were the Nuremberg codes, right? And there are many other codes of ethics where if you're going to experiment on a human being, you have to meet one of two criteria. You have to either have that person's consent. So in other words, I'm dying, I'm in my very final stages, there's nothing you can do to help me. But if you did some experiment on me, even though it's not going to help me, you do some experimental treatment, it might help someone else. As long as I am conscious and competent and I can say, you know what, I'm okay with that, do that, maybe I can help someone else. So it's not going to kill me, but it's not going to help me, and it's experimental, and it might not be great for me. That's one. Or two, if I am not conscious and competent and I cannot speak for myself, the only experimental treatment that is ethical to use on me is something that there is great hope will help me myself. So either I'm not consenting, but it is for my better health and well-being, or I can consent and say, there's nothing you can do for me anyway, so sure, try that new chemo or try that new drug that might be able to help someone else and see what happens there. But with embryonic stem cell research, where we have, and human cloning, right, where we have this push toward taking members of the human family and experimenting on them or taking their stem cells, which results in their death, certainly without their consent and obviously without helping them themselves. So we have just plowed over what we were supposed to have learned one of the last times that we attacked a whole group of human beings.
You realize, would agree, you're comparing the folks doing this to Dr. Mengele.
Well, it's funny. If you've got it's not funny. If you've got a woman who's in a crisis pregnancy, or you've got a woman going through something like that, we can all say, oh my gosh, you're in a crisis, an emotional crisis. You may probably have been abandoned by the child's father. You don't know what to do. You're, of course, in pregnancy. I well know your hormones are a little all over the place. You are truly in crisis. That's why the pro-life movement has never called for women who have had abortions to be punished. But if you get, this is almost, abortions, I don't want to say worse because what happened in the Holocaust is unspeakably evil. But with abortion, you're talking about hitmen, right? You're talking about people who get paid to kill people. In every other area of life, that is a higher penalty under the law, right? That's a higher crime when you're not just killing for passion or killing for something else, but you are killing because somebody gave you money to kill someone. If you look at Dr. Nathanson, one of the founders of NARAL at the time, the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws, they've changed their name so many times now to try to better their image. Heaven knows what it is now. But he said himself, first of all, we just lied, and second, it was big. It was really, really, really big business, right? So, but the other thing that he said was that they knew, not just the hierarchy of the pro-abortion movement, but the doctors. When you're the one pulling pieces of children, there's no saying, I didn't know. There's not a woman in a counseling office is being told, this is a blob of cells. This is a bunch of tissue. She desperately needs to hear that. She wants to hear that, right? This person is in crisis. But the person who's taking that child apart, that person knows exactly what's happening. As admitted to by so many abortionists who have come out of that industry and said that what they suffered emotionally as a result of what they've done. And from the Albany area, we have Tony Levatino, who he's now in New Mexico, but is a doctor and a lawyer, and he did abortions. And he said, a few things led to him changing his mind, including the fact that his beautiful daughter, who they adopted, who they desperately wanted, was hit by a car and killed. And he realized that he was doing that for money, taking away people's precious children in his office. So